Hello, everyone. Books with Banks back again, and I am so thrilled and I feel so lucky to be joined by two of my favorite authors, Stephen Erikson and Ian C. Esslemont. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Yeah.
So in a way of introduction or a type of introduction, I expect a lot of people tuning into this video might one of their first questions or one thing that they might be interested in most of all is current progress updates on projects that you're working on now. I didn't know if there was any of that you either of you would like to share at the top of our discussion.
Yeah. Do you want to start?
Well, sure. For those tuning in who are Malazan readers, um, I have a series of called the Paths to Ascension, and I right now for currently the next installment is with Bantam, so they have the manuscript, and they're sort of going to be going over it, and so in the coming year, so 26, hope to see um, what would be book five in that series. And the working title is The Last Champion.
Okay. Is there anything that is, I guess, okay to be public knowledge about setting or characters or anything like that?
Well, I'll just say I think it's public knowledge already that it's set in the what's called the Seven Cities
Oh,
region.
great. Oh, sounds fantastic. And it sort of makes sense following on from Forge of the High Mage, the book before. It seemed like there were a couple scenes at least that were setting things up there. Uh, Thank you. Thank you. Steve?
Well, I'm working on Walk in Shadow, the third Carcanis novel, plus a standalone science fiction novel, which I'm sort of squeezing in every now and then when I get time, or I'm so inclined. Um, and then I guess the next book coming, well, I've just had No Life Forsaken. It's just come out. Yeah.
Mhm.
So the companion one to that, I guess, is following in a year. I'm
Okay.
assuming. But I mean, it's already been delivered, so it's again, it's all down to what the publishers have scheduled in terms of their releases and things. So
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you both for catching us up on those details or that info. I To sort of introduce the broader topic of today's discussion, I'll actually talk briefly about the recent book that came out about a sort of Carl Jungian analysis of
Mm.
Book of the Fallen, and Steve, you wrote this great foreword to that, in which you explained that you weren't you didn't know that you were necessarily inspired by Carl Jung in any particular way, but you could definitely see the argument that the author was putting forward.
Mhm.
That got me thinking and wondering which theorists, scholars, schools of thought, whatnot, were kind of most top of mind or did most explicitly influence both of you in your uh, kind of world creation process. But then I started thinking, oh, well, then we probably have to go back to when they met in the field or in school. And I know we've gotten different little pieces of your backgrounds, meeting each other, where you studied, where you worked. But I thought it could be really helpful and fun for the community to have a more cohesive story put together of what you were both studying, when you met, how this all kind of came to be. Um,
Yeah, well, I'm thinking back on it. It's rather strange. I guess Cam, you were a year behind me in the university
Yeah,
anthropology
maybe two.
department.
Yeah,
What?
maybe 2 years, like behind you.
Maybe two? Yeah, okay. Um, because I never met you in any classes at the University of Manitoba. You know, I discovered later you told me that you basically spent most of that time gaming. So so it's not surprising, but I hadn't done any role-playing games at the time. But I remember we met in the University of Winnipeg archaeology lab, um, when the person we were working for, Richard Callahan, was assembling the team, as it were, before we headed out to the field for a project called Mud Portage, archaeological project, I guess. That's that, and I think I'd just come back from. No, that was the year before. I was thinking when I'd already been to Belize, hadn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. So yeah, it was not that summer because I did a different project, but then the following the spring. And that's where we met. And I don't know, it just sort of worked out that we ended up sharing a tent.
Okay.
One of the worst tents ever. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. We met on the more or less on that dig, that
yeah.
project. We're thrown together in the tent and in the bush. And in circumstances like that, you either end up hating the person that you're stuck with, or you just become best friends. So,
Yeah.
and we found as we talked that we shared so many interests, just amazing. And then it came out that we both had this secret ambition to be writers as well. Uh, uh, of all the presumption, and
Hmm.
that we both loved fantasy, science fiction, and we and shared many authors in common that we admired. And
Yeah, I just completed my first year in the writing program at the University of Victoria. I remember that. So I'd had 1 year at least of experience of doing that. But of course, that kind of program, you don't write fantasy or science fiction. You're writing contemporary fiction. So yeah, we were both imposters because Cam eventually followed on and uh, ended up at UVic as well.
yeah, yeah. So I after the so we met quite early on in our academic careers. And so we were both undergrads in archaeology, and then we both went on and to do BAs in creative writing at the University of Victoria. And then Steve went his way to Iowa for a master's, and I went to University of Alaska for my for a master's in creative writing. And at that time, we weren't we had already been studying literature, like both of us. We both had a love for literature generally. And so when you talk about we've been asked about influences, and we've often spoken about fantasy authors, of course, but we were also reading far and wide science fiction and contemporary literature, classics, and so we, and that's something that we both want to stress that really you should read as widely as possible.
Did when you were both in those separate writing programs, did you compare notes, different theories or I guess philosophies of those different programs? Anything like that?
Um, well, I'll say that not really. And we already had this body of work,
Mhm.
which came out of our gaming, and it was just sort of sitting there. And we had already tried to uh, sort of bring it to the next level by writing screenplays and basing screenplays in our fantasy and horror and other uh, genres and pitching those. But that didn't work out. And so really the influence, the philosophies and all the rest were already embedded in that body of work, in the milieu, in the histories, and all of the stuff that we created for the gaming world.
Yeah, I would agree. It was everything was fed into the gaming, which became sort of the foundational stuff. And so that's where sort of even our narratives, our storytelling chops, I guess, were honed during gaming as opposed to writing. Um, and I think that really worked out because it allowed us as students of anthropology to basically start inventing an entire world with all of its cultures. And then the social mechanisms that would be in place once sort of the foundational um, physics, if you will, of that world were laid out in terms of magic and the presence of gods and a bit more permeable transitions between death and life and other realms and all the rest. So once that was all put in place, it got play tested in a sense for I guess entertainment purposes, but also for verisimilitude, and trying to create something that felt very real, and the mechanisms of society at play, if you will, all through the gaming, and that's kind of what made it. That's what made it a lot of fun because we could apply anything to it. So certainly, if you think of Gardens of the Moon, it's a huge chunk of that Cam, I think you wouldn't deny drawing from the Three Musketeers. Um, and that's just one of the ways in which we messed around with stuff.
Were there, I guess, were you taking anything, either of you taking anything from the field of anthropology, like any specific theorists or writers, and commenting on or twisting around some of those debates or discussions that were happening in that field in particular? Were you using the games to kind of like play around with any of that?
Cam?
Um, I don't think maybe not necessarily consciously or deliberately,
Okay.
but I remember myself feeling that this is like in the 80s, of course, that we were studying, and that a lot of the representations or depictions of earlier hominids uh, just didn't do justice to their sophistication and what I presume they would be more or less just like us. I thought, and so that's a deliberate representational choice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know if it's still the case, but certainly anthropology was founded on um, a theoretical framework of how cultures evolve, and how they become more sophisticated. So you had sort of these tiers of development of cultural development, and I guess the basic model is neo-Marxist, and so there's an implicit um, almost judgment value that's placed on all of these things. And I think within anthropology, it's very easy to be comfortable with um, this notion of hunter-gatherer rising to horticulture or and animal domestication, and then agriculture, and then tribal, and then state, and it all moves its way up. But of course, if you push it to the furthest end, that's when you get the highly political side of things in that theory, right? In neo-Marxism, because capitalism sits below communism
Right.
and that kind of thing, right? So, but I think anthropologists tended to avoid the top part of that tier. They weren't really approaching that kind of stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of implicit assumptions in that structure that are certainly open to challenge and open to being explored. And I don't know to the extent to which we were sort of deliberately targeting anything, but we didn't. We fell into the pattern, I think, of subversion and undermining expectations fairly early in the gaming. Um, and I mean, it's how we kind of wrong-footed each other over and over again with our characters and our stories, and that was part of the fun. Was just unplugging that stuff. So I would say less anthropological in terms of commentary, um, but more the genre of fantasy itself and the tropes that were in place that I guess, and especially in epic fantasy at the time in the 80s, were kind of overwhelming the genre. Um, so we were even gaming against those tropes all the way through.
Thank you. Yeah. I I'm also curious, there's a number of historian characters or historical epigraphs and things throughout the both of your series. And I'm curious about, I guess, was there ever tension between, let's say, the Department of Anthropology and that of history, or the field of anthropology and the field of history? And if there is maybe a little bit of a having fun playing around with how fictional history actually can be, or written history actually can be. I studied history for my first two degrees, so I really kind of enjoyed that aspect of your books. I'm not coming at this question in a defensive manner at all. I love things like, oh, history can be just as creative as literature. I love that sort of side of the argument. I'm kind of curious how either of you feel about that.
Cam?
Yeah, oh, sure. I mean, another one of the not necessarily arguments, but movements and that I think both of us were, influenced by and came out of was, the sort of the settlement and the establishment of post-colonial studies and say, for example, Benedict's Imagined Communities, and I'm a great admirer of Said's work
Hmm.
back, despite shortcomings, but still I was operating very much in a Saidian space of so I was approaching history as storytelling and just flat out storytelling. And these are stories we tell ourselves, stories nations tell themselves to create an identity. And I wanted to really forefront that personally in my own narratives.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just thinking about that because you were also you were going on into PhD, weren't you, for colonial studies, weren't you?
Hmm.
Yeah,
At University of Minnesota, eventually I ended up in a PhD program and got all the way near the end.
Okay.
Uh, ABD, I was all done, just working on the dissertation. But then I got an offer to publish as a writer, and so I chose to pursue my passion
Nice.
and put that time towards fantasy and fiction writing.
yeah, yeah. I think there was very much a post or post. How would I
Just
describe it?
post everything.
Post everything. Yeah, it was postmodern, I guess, in the sense that even anthropology was being challenged on its basic precepts. Um, and as archaeologists, we're not even thinking in terms of anthropologists. We're archaeologists, right? So,
Right, right.
so we were quite happy to mock anthropology. It's like, whichever one we wanted to go for. And I don't know what your undergraduate minor was, Cam, but mine was I had two at history and classics. So what were yours?
Yeah, classics.
Classics, yeah. So I think, yeah, we were coming at it from almost from an archaeological point of view in recognizing that the degree to which you can interpret how past cultures existed, um, once you passed uh, the age of writing, um, you're in a fairly wild environment at that point, and it's too easy to carry assumptions across from ethnology or ethnography, but also from history as well. And so, um, I mean, the archaeologist recognizes pretty quickly that, what the stuff we're digging up is like 0.1%, of what that culture was. Um, and so there's so little you can actually ascertain. And then there's sample bias and all that kind of stuff. So if we're just recovering stone tools of a site, there could be the tendency to think that that's the primary source of material for technology, and it's probably not.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it can be a challenge to try to um, create a definitive sort of description of a past culture once you've gone past written histories. Um, and that to me that's kind of the fun part because that's where the imagination kicks in. But then there's, like Cam mentioned, there's that assumption that the people of the past were somehow dumber than we are
Mhm.
or less sophisticated. Um, and that in the absence of technology and uh, bodies of literature and all that kind of stuff, there was a kind of simplicity that simply probably did not exist. I mean, I think we can assert rather that it did not exist. That um, knowledge base would be, I guess, orally transmitted as opposed to any other means. Um, but there's plenty of evidence to indicate that the memory of pre-literate peoples is far superior than the memory of literate peoples. So, sophistication is there, and that allows for almost according a measure of respect to the people of the past, as opposed to, um, I guess, sort of being judgmental or dismissive of those cultures as being, superstitious or
Mhm.
whatever, right?
And when you do get into written histories, say uh, the so-called hard cultures where information is inscribed in stone, uh, baked mud tablets and cuneiform little cylinders. Uh, Once you sort of internalize that most of this is propaganda, uh, then you realize that wait, there's an agenda here. These are political statements. They're not necessarily histories. They're purportedly, they're presenting themselves as histories, but they're not real histories of what actually happened. Kings lists are often aspirational, um, descended of this god, descended of that god, and so they are trying to you know, tells, tell people about their power and their glory and all the rest. And you have to, once you've internalized that, you realize that these are all just fictions and stories that you're dealing with.
Yeah, and also, especially if you look at the military histories, right? Because
Mm.
when they start dropping the numbers of the armies, yeah, they're somewhat exaggerated. Yeah, probably.
I I guess then connecting this to your own imaginations and your own creativity and the fantasy genre, both of you have then, I guess, used uh, common elements of fantasy to have these species or races that live uh, for extraordinarily long times, and so then you can see. The precursors to humanity uh, just walking around with modern day or modern man. Yeah, I'm curious to hear any of your thoughts on that aspect of fantasy, the long life of the elf or whatever. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, what I had in mind was um, the oversimplification representation of the sort of building block of lineages that
Hmm.
were being taught, that this hominid led to this hominid, which led to this hominid. And now we're seeing more and more now in studies that actually there were many different coexistent, what we would call, species, subspecies,
Yeah.
existing next to each other and with each other. And the sort of single dominance of one particular type, Homo sapiens sapien, is actually a fairly recent phenomenon. And if you go back 100,000, 50,000, even less, you'll have a number of other coexistent groups on the face of the earth. And I think then that's actually the norm.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I certainly found and find the most fascinating. I mean, even back then, so we're looking at the 80s. So in terms of paleoanthropology or physical anthropology, human evolution, I guess people were talking primarily about two distinct peoples. So you had your modern humans and you had your Neanderthals.
Mhm.
We didn't yet, have Denisovan or Floresiensis or any of these. Also, I don't think I don't think it was well understood just how expansive Homo erectus, for example, was. And of course, even now, people are sort of blending ergaster, which is a sort of another variation of this, with erectus. Um, but I think it was, yeah, and it was definitely known in the 80s at least that Homo erectus had made it all the way out to Indonesia. So I certainly you want to fire the imagination that cross-cultural first contact of some kind, between Neanderthals and modern humans, uh, must have been rather extraordinary. And I guess, yeah, I mean, when you create this, fantasy world, you're now free to sort of explore that. You can put that onto the page and um, present points of view from both sides, just to see how that plays out. Um, and I guess, yeah, that probably played a large role in a lot of the um, various species that we were coming up with. But also that idea of longevity. It's where an individual can carry um, personal knowledge of an extensive history. Um, but even there, things are going to be forgotten, and we all have our internal narratives of our lives, and so we will alter even our memories to better suit our particular positions. So all of it's up in the air, right? So even characters who've lived for a long time, that's no guarantee of veracity in terms of their memories of what happened uh, 10,000 years ago. And so that way with those characters, we can address that sort of sheer ambiguity of the past in a more direct fashion, I guess.
I feel like one of the characters that you both share the most, because there's not a ton of overlap in which groups of characters your different books cover, but one character that I can almost expect to make some kind of appearance, if not in your next book, then the one after that for both of you is Callor. Um, and I assume part of that might be you both just really enjoy the character. I don't know if this longevity piece is a big part of that as well. But I'd love to hear your thoughts specifically on Calor. And I guess also, since you both mentioned that you're often just writing to an audience of one, being each other, uh, what your reactions to what the other has done with Calor. I'm fascinated by this. Yeah.
Well, Callor is Cam's character, so
Okay.
Cam's definitely should weigh in first on this one.
Yeah, he's seems to go through some transformations.
Mhm.
I for me, in our writing, he became, or perhaps even was to begin with, sort of a walking remonstration, a sort of a walking lesson, if you will, uh, and someone who we can use as a example. And people, of course, are using him as a to compare themselves, but not you shouldn't admire
Okay.
his achievements, and yet um, in so many other narratives, such an individual would be the sort of central character of admiration. And but of course, we're trying to completely invert that, but not on the surface, not, we're not, shaking a finger or trying to teach a lesson. It's just we're showing and demonstrating through that character, and that character offers so much room for that.
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of I'm thinking in terms of influences, and how what Callor was sort of addressing. Um, I think there are some immortal style characters in uh, some of Moorcock's stuff in
Mhm.
Zelazny, people like that, um, who were, yeah, the main protagonists of particular stories. Um, but the basic sort of foundational motivations of Callor, as far as I could see, was one, this quest for immortality, um, through whatever means were possible, but also this unbridled ambition. And you put those two things together, and you get a character who, uh, I guess, becomes the driving force to calamity and catastrophe almost everywhere they go. And yet, to never learn that lesson is what was the most human element of Callor,
Hmm.
which is, makes Callor a comment on a commentary on everybody, um,
Hmm.
on history itself, and on the great man in history.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the great man theory. And to just shrug off any catastrophe or failure and say, well, those are flawed tools. I'll just try.
Just try again. Yeah,
Once
here we
again.
go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I I might pivot a little bit. There's I guess because I want to talk about or get into more of the specific archaeological projects that you both worked on, and where these or like where you did this work, and how some of those cultural influences might have impacted the series. Um, but I guess as a bridge into that, the Kachain Chamal. Wonderful fantasy creation. It's one of my favorite things that you two have, added to just the visuals that like run through my brain. So thank you so much for the Kachain Chamal. They're incredible. Um, and Steve, I know you mentioned that at least you were working in Belize for a little bit.
Mhm.
And I was wondering if the Quiche Maya people, if their name had any influence on that,
No.
or if Mesoamerican culture in any way had any influence. No.
Oh, no. For Kachain Chamal?
Yeah.
No, I don't think
Okay.
so. I would think I would, in terms of trying to create the culture, um, drawing more from science fiction, I think, than
Okay.
anything else.
Okay.
But also, the idea of um, alternate ways of communicating that are not related to speech, for example, because uh, you know, a crocodile mouth is not going to be able to articulate anything very well. So they need to have some other means of communicating. And then, so from there, it just sort of shifted into this idea of scent glands
Okay.
and operating, on those lines. So I think science fiction probably more than anything else for Kanchin
Okay.
Chamal. But um, I'm trying to remember sort of the origins of the Kanchin Chamal, but I think it related to when Cam sort of introduced in the gaming Moonspawn,
Mm-hmm.
which was part of the campaign that where I was playing Rake and Animander and Kaladin and Triss, I guess. Um, and that was sort of the acquisition of Moonspawn by Animander. Um, and my memory of it is, yeah, there was a blend of magic and technology of some form. that Cam had put in place with Moonspawn. And then I remember doing a schematic of it as well at some point. But Cam, what do you remember of that?
Yeah. So this artifact needed it was obviously inhuman. It was not built for humans, but I didn't say who. It was just simply this strange artifact that he finds. And so I think Steve then took it upon himself to sort of create the race that might have actually built it, I think. So that's where we get the Kachain Chamal as this strange old race, alien, inhuman race that was responsible for the artifact. And this is all in the gaming.
Sure. Yeah. Were they a particularly early or late addition to the gaming, or yeah, if you can remember?
I would say early, don't you? I mean,
It's early, but we didn't pursue it much.
no, we didn't.
Beginning, but it was just off on the side.
Yeah.
It's my memory. And then we focused more on the military, political stuff.
Okay.
Um,
And I guess also then with things like Rake specifically, or the Theist Andy and the other Theist groups versus the Amass. Did one of those come along in the gaming much earlier than the other, or yeah?
Um, I think the Jagu were quite early.
Okay. Yeah.
The Talana Mass, yeah, that was during the campaign of Kellenbad, whom we knew as Wu back then, Dr. Wu. Um, so that's where they started to make their appearance, and are related to, well, things that are already present, I guess, in Cam's already published novels, in terms of, yeah, the meetings with and that first throne and all that kind of stuff.
Right, right.
So when was that? I mean, one of the things with characters like Rake and stuff was that they reached a power level in the game that it just became more reasonable to park them and leave them for a bit, and then head back down to, as Cam says, the military style side of things, and your basic soldiers, and then sort of build them up through their own campaigns. But even that was precluded by the whole empire building of Kellenbad and Dancer, which was its own campaign.
Yeah, and Steve ran certainly beginnings of that, and then most of it, and then we sort of branched out more and shared more. Um,
Well, you did the Crimson Guard stuff, right? So,
yeah,
and that sort of became it worked in tandem with the Malazan Empire stuff.
back and forth. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And for archaeology, Steve's done much more than I've did a few digs in Canada, in Western Canada, Manitoba, Ontario, and so I don't have any international experience with it on digs.
Okay.
But for me, I would say when you're going down through strata and you have a cultural horizon, say going from, pre-contact, and then you get the layer of contact with trade goods appearing, of Western trade goods and clay pipes and such in Canada. That you just okay, well, that's the horizon, and you just sort of note it and measure it. But what strikes me is the violence of that.
Mm.
And that's what really I can't let go of that line that's drawn there, what happened there, that transition. So that's really what captures my interest, is that moment. How did that happen? And what was it like? In scholarly history, tend to brush over it.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah. No, Cam, you worked different dig. You worked at one point you were doing Lower Fort Garry, is that right? Or
Yeah.
was it up? Yeah. So
One,
yeah, that would have been a pretty major uh, contact between European culture and the native culture because the indigenous cultures, the camps would have been all around that fort.
Hmm.
Um, so you would have had a real blending there.
this is Winnipeg,
Yeah.
in the Manitoba, right in the middle. It's just actually just north of the geographical center of North America, if you think about it.
Okay.
Uh, and a major trading post center right along Red River. And that's where a lot of the that sort of transition was focused. Um, and if you're digging there, um, well, for me, I mean, it was less of a scholarly pursuit than almost a visceral, physical one, especially if, as an archaeologist, you're right in there in it, and you can smell it and feel it. It becomes personal.
Yeah, you mentioned smell. See, I only did a few digs that were, or maybe three that were transitional in that sense between contact and pre-contact. And in Winnipeg, there's the other part of the Fort Garry complex, which I guess is Upper Fort, so upriver basically. And the only excavation I did there was of an officer's latrine. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, you're in the smell of that one, that's for sure. But
But you were at the Forks, Steve, right?
yeah, at the Forks, yeah, and yeah, and so the Forks also was where um, the the railroad sort of uh, closed in it and impacted that whole region. So again, yeah, there's a crushing cultural contact that
Hmm.
just obliterates everything else under it. And then the last one was Mouth, again, a fur trading post. Actually, my field school was also Fort Dauphin. So yeah, now that I think about it, there's quite a few historical contact points. Um, I always found interesting the transition between lithics exclusively and ceramics at a certain point in North America, where pottery starts showing up, and that's a very specific cultural horizon as well, which is um, and my interest was always the older stuff, even though I ended up on weird digs that were quite, you know, not in that direction. I always wanted to head for the older stuff. So
What were some of the digs that you worked on outside of North America, or did have you worked outside of North America?
yeah, although uh, I guess I mean Belize was ironic. It was called the Belize uh, Archaic Archaeological Reconnaissance Project, BAAR. I think it was Boston University and Peabody Foundation. And what makes it ironic was there I was um, in almost the heartland of the Mayan civilization, but I was digging up artifacts that were identical to what I was digging up in Manitoba. Absolutely identical. Archaic technology is the same across the board. Um, and it's the stone technology that leads you right up to the advent um, of ceramics. So it's the one that sits under that. Um, and it's probably the one I've yeah I've kind of encountered the most in my digs. And so yeah, that was Belize. And then the other stuff I did primarily volunteer because I was already writing the novels by that point. So I was in southern Italy. Um, I was in Cornwall in England, which is an incredible witchcraft site that also had a Neolithic component sitting underneath it. A Neolithic feature, actually. It's quite interesting. But the witchcraft was absolutely insane. The rituals that were clearly going on there um, from the 1700s up to 1950. So, uh, how's that for continuity?
Right.
Same
And
type of what?
and Mongolia, but wasn't that a survey?
Yeah, Mongolia was a bust. I mean, I that was it was not a great dig. It was they were looking for really, really early stuff. Okay, so this would have been immediately. Actually, there were periods. I guess they were talking about that were previous interglacials. So not just up to the last glaciation, but predating that. Um, but the stone material that was being used locally there was absolute rubbish. I mean, it was like whatever that cultural group was, they'd clearly been pushed into that area and were making do with what they had. And it was just it was similar to the rhyolite of Rush Bay, Rush Bay Road, so that you could flake it unifacially on one side only, and that was it. It could not handle flaking on the on. You could not create a biface like something was flaked on both sides.
Mm.
So it's just absolute crap stuff. And they were getting to that layer, um, and the first area where they were excavating, they were actually carving through a burial on Kurgan, which one end of it, but even still, that just appalled me that you would go through an Iron Age burial, undisturbed burial, in order to get to this horrible, um, crappy, you know, archaeological assemblage, artifact assemblage. And then, of course, yeah, I mean, I think biology plays a huge role in if you're traveling around the world. And that environment, my biology was not suited to it. It nearly killed me. Yeah.
I'm glad it didn't.
Yeah, it was between books 9 and 10.
Oh wow,
So
yeah, that would have been
that would have sucked. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, for your life is what like, but also for the fans, yeah. Um, yeah. I do either of you still read or I guess keep up with current like archaeology like discussions, theorists or academics?
Well, Steve, much more though is much more so than me. Um, so he's much more keeping up with I'm looking more at reading articles in major trends and such, but not actually digging right into the field, so to speak.
I mean, I haven't been in a university bookstore in a long time, so I haven't really checked things out lately. Um, I mean, it was ironic, but my primary interest was human evolution.
Mhm.
And one of the frustrations at the University of Manitoba for me was there were no paleoanthropologists doing any work out of any field work out of the U of M at the time. And I just love field work. Nothing beats it for me. So had there been somebody, you know, running projects in the Rift Valley of Africa, coming out of the University of Manitoba, that's the direction I would have gone in for sure. Um, that was my interest. Yeah. But I was stuck with Manitoba instead.
Okay. Um, I might move the conversation a little bit then up into the more recent, I guess once you were both working on your series and the archaeology stuff had been maybe put to the side a little more. I guess how did that work when you were both, I guess, first sharing that maybe the screenplay hadn't worked out, but now for Steve, you had the Guardians of the Moon book, and then Cam, you got Night of Knives. How are those like conversations? How did that all go down?
Go ahead, Cam.
We actually didn't talk very much at all.
Okay.
Hardly at all. Um, we had gone our separate ways. We had divided things up. As I've said a couple times, we made a list. So I said, Steve said, okay, what do you want to write? And so I had my list of six or so book titles and regions and historical moments. I said, well, I'm interested in these. And Steve had his 10. There's so many. And they didn't overlap that much. We were careful to make sure that we each gave each other room. And then we took our lists and went off our separate ways to graduate schools. Um, and Steve, to his credit, kept to his guns and kept pushing for it. And I drifted more into academia and was thinking making more of a career of it. Um, and so we weren't discussing it very much at all, actually.
Okay.
No.
And then I suppose when each of you read the other's first novel in this world, what was that experience like?
Well, that happened on Salt Spring Island, didn't it? That's where
Uh,
we do most of the writing. So we were both living on the same Gulf Island, just north of Victoria here. Um, and that's where it started, anyways. And so we were able to sort of hand each other blocks of but it wasn't out of Knives. It was Return of the Crimson Guard,
oh, okay, okay.
Am's part, and Gardens of the Moon on my part. So yeah, we were firing those, I think, back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, actually, it's true. I think about it. Gardens especially came out of a lot, the kernel of a couple of really nice scenes and moments, and the setting and all this came out of a series of games,
Yeah.
and then we did a screenplay
Hmm.
and based on it, and then Steve novelized the screenplay and made major changes and adjusted it to fit that medium. Uh, and so there was a lot of back and forth. That's true on that
Yeah.
particular problem.
And so then both of your final books in your main series, The Crippled God and Assail, those both came out, I want to say, what was it, would that have been 2011, 2012, somewhere in
Mhm.
there? Um, and
That's it.
then you both went on to write prequels, did more collaboration, or more, maybe not collaboration, but more contact pickup when you started working on these prequels or other spin-offs?
Yeah, yeah, there was more discussion. Um, but I had already stated in that list that I was going to be doing, I was interested in doing sort of early empire stuff and the meeting of Callan and Dancer and how all that played out. Because and that comes out of a gaming as well, that moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was I think what happened was once Cam was sort of on board with, providing fiction, um, then we were much more able to actually meet up because
Hmm.
we were living in very different places. But when you get invitations to like the World Fantasy Awards convention and that kind of stuff, gave us a chance to meet up and we'd always head off to the bar and sit in a corner and work through stuff. Um, and then there was ICFA down in Florida, in Orlando. That at that point we were able to um, sort of lay out some more groundwork and make sure each of us knew what the other was up to and talk through all that kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
it was basically we sort of had to get our feet on the ground first in terms of publications before uh, we were kind of able to um, get into that kind of stuff. Because I don't know about you, Cam, but in fact, I'm fairly confident in this. Communicating just via email or phone calls is kind of useless. We're kind of bad at it. Uh, but in person we can hammer stuff out. And so once we had that opportunity presented to us, we took advantage of it for sure.
Yeah. We were, friends and we'd been gaming for years prior. So we already had established that sort of communication. And then, for example, when we were both invited to France for a book tour and we were together for like 6 weeks or so.
That's the
Um,
longest we've been
yeah.
seeing each other for a
Um,
long time.
and even then we made up a whole bunch of new stuff. And the moment we were together again, it was a lot of fun.
Was it like
Yeah.
being in the tent again from the
Yeah.
first dig?
Yeah.
Yeah, including some of the most amusing scenes. I mean, I don't think I laughed as hard. I know Cam hasn't laughed as hard as he did in Marseille when we did that tour of the cave. Um, that was an extraordinary. That was classic. I bet it's the kind of thing though that we both have experienced, when we were sharing a flat here in Victoria, right? And when we were gaming, where you're laughing until tears are coming down. But
Mhm.
it didn't take much, but it was pretty funny. I guess I have to describe that, don't I?
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
so
Yeah.
Very
yeah, there
unfortunate.
is.
Wish we hadn't done that.
Yeah, I know. There's a cave that was found by divers just off coast of Marseille, and the divers were able to reach a part of the cave um, that had air, so it was trapped. So I don't know. I guess the sea level when the sea levels rose is when it kind of sealed access to the cave.
Yeah, they cut it
But
off. Yeah.
yeah, but within that cave are some extraordinary cave art, cave paintings. And so what they've done is they've recreated them as opposed to um, obviously they're not going to send divers down to
Right.
swim under. It's a bit dangerous. So they kind of recreated it. Um, yeah, it was very funny how it was done. It was more the only thing I can describe it like is um, they created this fake elevator that you
Oh,
step into, and the elevator presumably goes down, 200 feet or whatever it is, down to the cave. But of course, it's actually not moving at all.
right.
So it was kind of like a set to Doctor No, it was or Thunderball.
Yeah.
It was
Mm.
absolutely absurd.
Yeah. And then
And
you
yeah,
got into
so
these little what are just like roller coaster cars, and then
Okay.
yeah,
you're on a track, and you pass all of the murals
yeah,
and the sections of the caves, right? And it's wonderful stuff. It's beautiful
yeah.
prehistoric cave art. But we had these English translations, and that we were,
Okay.
and the translations were rather amusing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
great. What?
So, but what's fun about that is it then, I mean, it's a reminder of just the blast we had gaming going all the way back and on the digs. Some of the digs we were on were just ridiculous. Which is one of it shows up in the fiction in the interactions of especially the soldiers.
Right.
Um, that's where that kind of absurdity starts to sort of peak out. But it was all there in the digs we were at the digs we were on, um, always there. And then when we were sharing a flat or whatever, then again that kind of pairing up of characters in novels,
Right.
and that's very much sort of drawing on the experiences that Cam and I had gaming, one on one kind of thing. Yeah.
Was there anyone else on those digs with you guys who would play regularly? I know in some of the dedications you list some people every now and then, but I've never gotten a real clear picture of exactly who else there was or if there were others that played.
Not at Mud Portage.
Not
No.
then, but back in
Okay.
when Steve was in Winnipeg, he started a couple groups
Oh, okay,
and
okay.
Yeah.
had regular gaming gangs, and I joined in for when I was there for a time. So those individuals, that's a Winnipeg based.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just amused at our first aborted attempt of role playing in at Mud Portage with the
Yeah.
crew and a boss. Yeah, that didn't work out very well, but
Were
No,
they just not particularly engaged in the role-playing experience, or?
no, it took it too well, actually.
Oh, okay.
Because they acted in a very realistic and Steve included manner. He had a character who was very small and had a huge shield, and another character was I forget, Richard was his name, who ran the dig. Great man, great guy. Um, and so at the first encounter, they just ran away. And
Oh, okay.
yeah. But Richard's character had the big shield.
yeah,
He had the big
he hid
shield.
under his huge shield.
He hid
Um,
under it. Yeah,
yeah. And so I was like, well, okay, fair enough. I mean, it's a very natural reaction.
yeah. And my character climbed a tree
Yeah.
to
Okay.
escape the wolves.
It wasn't conducive to a campaign, a fantasy adventure campaign. So we had to sort of get that across and
Sure.
draw. Maybe you should actually engage.
Oh, it was
But
funny
I
because
didn't know.
I can't remember which character it was. It might have been Mike's character. I thought he was the tiny one. But anyways,
Maybe.
yeah, he attempted to backstab one of your NPCs,
Oh,
but
yes.
the
That's
character
true.
was only like 2 feet tall, so he
Um,
backstabbed him in the back of his calf, basically.
Yeah, right in the ankle. And
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was an absolute mess. But that's okay. We persevered later on after the dig. So
have either of you, this is a bit of a side thing, but have either of you tried gaming like tabletop RPG gaming, but virtually, like with different interfaces, just online?
I have very briefly. I'm not very good at that because uh I'm not very good with computers, basically. Um, and so it becomes awkward in that respect. But no, I'm not really done anything in a long time actually in terms of RPGs.
The main reason I ask is that's my last role-playing experience, and it didn't go particularly well, just way too difficult to get the group together
Yeah.
to actually do anything. So I was just curious if maybe you had had better luck or anything like that.
No, I mean, yeah, it's if it's not in person, to me, it doesn't feel, I don't know, I guess authentic enough. You need that dynamic, or at least I do.
And have either of you tried gaming as, I guess, part of the creative process for any of your recent novels, or is it? I'm sure it's all still based on obviously the same world and things, but have you, ever hit a wall recently and thought, oh, maybe let me try a gameplay sort of a version of this to see if it resolves differently?
Ken, do you try that with your kids at all, or
no, I haven't. I think that you had the best luck coming out of this because of Carson and the,
no?
being a character from another game that actually that made it into.
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of the characters of that particular squad, like Smiles, Korik,
Mm.
Tar, and Bottle, were all played by other people. I played Bokalane and Corporal Broach, but that was a short-lived campaign because the guy running the campaign couldn't deal with those guys at all.
Okay.
Um,
Who could?
so
Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't think there's anything else recently, anyways. Not really. No.
I One of the more recent things that I've seen that made me think about you two working together, talking, were the maps that that you included in Forge of the High Mage, and this conflict between which map is the correct one of those north, what the Falari Isles, um, and that. I mean, I just love the comedy and the kind of humor of that, and how it reflects the inaccuracy of primary source documents. I That also kind of made me think of the question, what conflicts have you two had, or contradictions have you two maybe or have come up in both of your separate world building processes that have then, led to something really interesting and creative like that? Um, yeah, I don't know if there are any specific examples that come to mind, or maybe there's been no conflict. Maybe it's been all peaceful.
Well, my memory is that there were very few. I mean, there are some minor ones, but nothing really major.
Hmm.
Um, that was a problem. There's just a lot of minor stuff. And then with the maps, as you mentioned, I that's deliberate. That's
Sure, sure, yeah.
No,
and that's an ongoing feud, actually. Between a couple of characters in the world, but I won't get into that because there's more of
Okay.
that.
yeah, there's more of that to come, but also it was all generated from the French France
Okay,
book
good.
tour. Yeah.
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 Great, great. I guess do either of you like have either of you read or previewed the other's work that's coming out in the next year or so, next couple of years, or do
Not
you pretty
really.
much keep a lid on those things until they're published and released?
I think it's more a case of neither of us likes reading on a screen.
Oh, okay. Oh, sure. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Steve introduced at ICFA, Steve introduced me to AP Canada, and
Right. Right.
he was Steve's pre-reader at that time already, and then he graciously agreed to take a look at my work, and I was very, very pleased to have his input. And so he's the guy who actually sees,
Right.
and Steve doesn't preview mine, and I don't preview his.
Okay. Has he
Although
ever
we
given
will
anything?
have
Oh, sorry.
we will have some conversations just to get certain details down.
Sure.
We'll ask each other questions. Yeah.
Has AP ever accidentally revealed something to one of you about what the other's working on, or anything along those lines? Okay.
Even if he did, neither of us would care.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like, yeah, whatever.
Uh, okay. Yeah. Um, well, I don't have too many other like specific questions, but I was wondering if there were any stories or any particularly memorable moments from those first days of you two getting to know each other that just have never really come up or have never really made it into any of these interviews. Just anything you feel like this conversation would be missing if we glossed over it.
Well, I almost killed Cam. Apart
Oh,
from that,
wow. Okay. Yeah. Let's hear that.
This is
Um,
outside the gaming.
yeah, outside the gaming, yeah, plenty of killing in the gaming. Um, there was a huge cliff on the other side of a small bay at Mud Portage. We were on a kind of a peninsula, Clearwater Bay, um, north northwest Ontario, and I'd been eyeing that cliff that whole first season. Um, but we didn't have any watercraft, so there was no getting across to it. Um, the watercraft came the next season. I think it's the next season, isn't it? Cam?
We had an aluminum boat.
Yeah. We got an aluminum boat from the University of Winnipeg that we proceeded to trash completely. Brand new boat. But the the guy running the dig, Richard, his younger brother, one of his brothers, came onto the dig, a guy named Martin, and he was a pretty fearless individual. So I think at some point in that second season, uh, I announced that I wanted to do some rock climbing on that cliff.
Now,
Um,
Steve has had experience rock climbing.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Prior to, he knew what he was doing. Okay,
Okay.
so
yeah. And so we had to do a shop, and so I think I bought a big watermelon in Kenora. This makes sense. Don't worry. Um, and a bottle of vodka, I guess.
Oh,
Right. And I think probably some cigars or something. But anyways, so that was our supply kit as we took the boat across. Um, you cut off the top of the watermelon, you pour the vodka in, basically. And so Martin, sort of a big Viking of a guy, uh, we didn't even have a motor for the boat, so he rowed us across. Um, Probably took about 20 minutes, I would think. Um, and we rode up to the base of the cliff, um,
Which rose sheer right out of the lake,
okay.
right out of the lake.
straight up.
But at the base, of course, was just huge
Yeah, tumble.
rocks that had fallen off,
Okay, yeah.
right? So I think even if you were to dive, you'd have to clear at least 15 feet to be safe, like outwards. So it was pretty nasty down at the base there. Um, so we tied up the boat, and Martin just took off. And he just went straight up the cliff, utterly fearless. Um, and I think he was probably didn't take him very long at all. He bowled his way up. And then I had I had a SLR camera that I wanted to carry up with me so I could take some shots halfway up, that kind of thing. Um, though I didn't really think how I was going to get my hands free to do that. But um, so I started climbing up, and I just had, I guess, army boots, basically, military surplus stuff. So not really the right kind of equipment to be climbing a cliff. And it turned out, um, if you could sort of visualize this cliff, it was all covered in orange lichen.
Oh,
It was
okay.
just this orange cliff. Um, and what you realize when you get there is that it's rotten. Like it just breaks apart in your hands. Um, and that's probably why there's so much tumble down at the base. So I started climbing, and I guess I got about, I don't know, maybe a third of the way up, but Cam had not yet committed to climbing yet. Is that right? Because you went out in the boat and you took some photographs
Took some
a little
pictures,
ways
yeah,
out.
through.
Yeah.
Then I came back in, and then started up after you.
Yeah.
Eventually decided I would. Uh, I thought, oh, I'll climb. What the heck? So I'm underneath him. I'm beneath him,
Okay.
which is not wise.
No, not on a rotten cliff.
Okay.
So we got to a certain point, I guess maybe a little over halfway, when for whatever the positioning Cam was in, he was facing a negative. So I mean, he had a bulge in front of him um, in the rock, and so it was going to have to go around that. And that's where you sort of realize the insanity of what you were doing, not having had any experience climbing. And the weird thing was, all the way through this, rocks were breaking off uh, underfoot in our hands, and everyone that tumbled down hit the boat. Every single one of them. It
For
was
some
ridiculous.
reason, yeah, there'd be this reverberating and metallic bang as
Yeah,
the huge rock hit this aluminum boat.
one after another. Yeah. And so I guess I was probably three-quarters up when I heard you calling, saying,
I was stuck.
you were
I,
stuck. Yeah.
I couldn't go down. I couldn't come up, and I was hanging outward on this.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went back down, which I don't, I mean, I hate going back. I hate climbing down. It's awful. Climbing up's a lot easier. So I got above him, and as I was positioning above him, big rock came out under the foot and hit your shoulder, right?
Yeah,
Missed your
hit
head
me.
by a few inches. And we're talking,
Numbed
a rock.
my
Oh my
arm.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that's where I almost killed him. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm hanging there, and eventually talks me out of, he had his foot on one hold, so put your hand on my foot. So I put my hand on his foot, and then the next thing we got around it, and obviously managed to succeed in getting up to the top, the two of us, and then at the top there's Martin
Mhm.
standing there. And he looks down at us and he says, "I didn't think you'd make it."
Meanwhile, his brother on the other side, back to the site, has set up a transit and a tripod, and has been busy drinking a beer, watching us. And he didn't think we'd make it
Whole
either.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So then Steve or Martin goes all the way around the cliff and swims or manages
yeah.
to
That's what happened.
get back to the boat. And we take the boat back, and it's just got all these fist size dents in it. It's huge. It's this brand new boat, and it's just wrecked.
Yeah, we trashed it. Yeah.
Did that come out of the budget for the dig, or was it?
I don't know. We left it to Richard to explain.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's always wear and tear on a project. So you could probably just write it off for that. But I mean, the we had these Coleman coolers, these plastic coolers, and the wear and tear on those ones were the giant tooth marks from the bears that have been trying to break their way into those things.
Gnawing on them.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
huge holes.
Yeah.
did you
Uh,
have any wildlife run-ins? Steve, I believe I've heard the
Yeah.
story about the scorpion, but yeah,
Oh, in Belize. Yeah, scorpions and fire ants in Belize, and fer-de-lance. And then I guess on the dig, we did have that big bear. Big bear came down to our kitchen.
yeah, cook tent
Yeah.
and tore it apart, went through all the stuff,
oh
uh,
wow,
managed to get open the cooler and because it wasn't a bear-proof
No.
gotcha,
chest,
yeah,
just a
Yeah.
regular.
I think the teeth getting into the lid, it was able to lift the lid up, right? Because it had
Maybe
bit the
so.
lid off.
Yeah.
And it ate, I think, 3 pounds of bacon.
oh nice, lucky bear,
Mm.
Yeah. And that's fine. We're fine with it eating that and not anything else.
right,
Yeah, our tents were off a ways.
okay,
So, and that was an interesting bear. It was a black bear, but it had a bit of a collar, like a silvery collar. So it would have had Kodiak in it at some point,
oh cool, okay.
which makes for a big animal,
Mhm.
really big animal.
Big. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
didn't
right.
want to mess with that one.
Yeah. If you guys don't have, I don't know, do you have any other stories like that? Because I have a couple sort of rapid fire questions that I'd like to ask. I guess rumors or things that I've heard might be the case that I want to verify.
Well,
The
Steve's told one story. I'll tell one quick little
okay,
story as well that when I would come down in the summers and stay with Steve and Claire, his wife, and on Salt Spring Island and in Victoria, wherever they were. And one summer when we actually scripted couple scenes for a possible screenplay film set in the Malazan world,
uh-huh.
and Steve managed to lasso some people from the local Society for Creative Anachronism who came with costumes and weapons, armor, everything. And it was a film set that we actually set up on Salt Spring Island. And Steve and I got in armor and in costume, and we played out a couple scenes as Fiddler and, as he was then known, Prairie Dog. Uh,
Oh, cool.
Fiddler and Hedge.
You sure?
yeah,
Okay, yeah.
and back then he was known as Prairie Dog.
Who was who
We
or who
actually
played?
acted out some scenes.
I was Fiddler, you
Okay,
were Prairie Dog. Yeah.
okay, great. That's fantastic. Yeah. I
Yeah, we did.
guess on the topic of you playing your characters, that is one of my rapid fire sort of questions. I had heard that with Kellen Vet and Dancer, that one of you would be running the game and the other would be playing as one of those characters. And that Steve, were you more often Dancer and Cam, were you more often Kellen Vet, or is that an
Yeah, yeah.
oversimplification?
That was
Generally speaking, yeah, yeah.
I was running that and
Okay.
Cam was playing Dr. Wu.
Okay.
and Dancer was the NPC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Steve played Dancer and pretty much all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Uh, Another question, sort of along those lines. I've heard that the crippled god's name, Kamensad, might be a reference to your names, nicknames. Is this true, or is this something that's not being revealed?
I came up with the names for the
Okay.
for Camisard and his other entities, and but it wasn't a play
Okay. Okay.
that I can think of consciously.
Okay. Because I heard that somewhere, I don't know, on some
Yeah, I probably would have
discussion.
made some oblique reference
Okay.
suggesting otherwise, but I don't remember Kevin Sod coming up as a name in the game at all. So, but
No,
if
it was
Cam
after.
remembers that,
It was later.
it's
Yeah,
later.
Okay.
it was later. Like
Okay.
Kellenvid as well was
Yeah.
later.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were
So
there
he
any
was
of those names that you guys had to like change because while like in the process of getting published, they were too
Mhm.
close to something that already
Yeah.
was something else?
Well,
yeah.
I mean, Prairie Dog became Hedge, as
Hmm.
in hedgehog,
Right.
basically,
Okay.
because my editor, our editor, was English, and we were in the UK, and he had no idea what a prairie dog was.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Um, and in
To
terms
North
of thinking of
America.
the audience, he
Yeah.
was thinking, well, we need something different there. Plus, Kalam was originally, and I have to predicate this by saying, or preface this by saying, I'm not, when I grew up reading comics, I grew up reading all DC. I never read
Mhm.
Marvel.
Sure.
Okay. So, but the
Me too.
character was following on from things like we had a character named Ferret, we had Prairie Dog, and Kalam was actually Wolverine, was his name.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So that we got rid of that pretty quickly for the novels.
Sure. Sure. Okay. Well, thank you. One other detached sort of a topic that I'd like to mention to both of you is that I'm currently working on a paper, and it has to do with a lot of these recent discussions about Tolkien and racial hierarchy and how race works in fantasy. And I'm trying to make the case that what you've both done with Malazan is a sort of deconstruction of that racial hierarchy that's so common to the genre. I don't know if you would have any, I don't know, any comments on that, just knowing that initial premise for the paper, if there's any reactions that you guys have to that idea.
Sure.
I,
I mean, I would think, yeah, that's definitely so. Although I'm been more open about my not necessarily influence, but I've read Tolkien a lot more with more assiduity than Steve has. I'm
Mhm.
fairly sure I can say that.
And
yeah,
I should say I love Tolkien and I enjoy reading Lord of the Rings and that sort of thing, but I do think there are definitely these things where there's the more advanced race and there's
Yeah,
the less developed race there. Yeah.
that's one of the things that we would definitely set out
Yeah.
to more broadly respond to. Like not to just Tolkien, but just the whole fantasy genre. That's one of the things that I think you can say is on our list that
yeah,
we wanted to react against. And
yeah, yeah. I mean, if Cam was sort of responding from the Tolkien side, I was responding from having grown up reading Edgar Rice Burroughs,
Okay. Sure.
Tarzan, and all of these books. And yeah, I mean, it's got historical context in terms of when it was produced
Right.
and and so that I think needs to be taken into account. But at the same time, uh, as modern writers, you want to um, not pretend that doesn't exist, and you want to address it in some fashion or another. Um, and I mean, part of it was also built into epic fantasy being so much Eurocentric
Sure.
and
Yeah.
medieval style. So there's all the belief systems, cultural mechanisms are already in place. Once you transfer, quasi pseudo-European medieval history into the fantasy realm, you're carrying all this stuff with you, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I guess Tolkien's a fairly clear example of that. But um, so yeah, I think yeah, we were definitely wanting to address a lot of that stuff, and there. I mean, one of my areas of study was Byzantine history, and
Mm,
I remember my professor um, in that class in the history of the Byzantine Empire. Um, he's a bit of a well, there were issues, but anyways, he one thing I did really admire was when he talked about what Constantinople was like around the 9th century, 10th century, and just how um, almost egalitarian it was, and how um, it didn't really involve itself too much on sort of segregating its population. So it was the most cosmopolitan city on the planet probably at that time. And I was always taken by that. And certainly when I think of Darujistan, I think of it in those terms as well. Um,
and sorry that your answers, both of your answers lead me to, new questions always. Architecturally, do you think there's a lot of like when you visualize Darujistan, uh, does it resemble Constantinople, or is it more just the culture or the?
yeah, more of the culture.
Okay,
Architecturally, I don't know, Cam. I mean,
Comes
it's your
down
city.
to the cover art and and representations that the artists might come up with for the city
okay,
and draw upon a lot of standard Eastern imagery. So you have minuets, you have towers and
sure.
domes, and there's sort of a limited architectural vocabulary that
It's true. Are there certain artists that you both feel have really captured the sort of what you had in your minds, or is what you have in your mind so flexible that a lot of it's just worked out?
Cam, anything?
well, I've been very happy with a lot of my cover work.
Steve Stone. Yeah.
Stone.
Okay, yeah,
I think I've been really lucky in a lot of ways for the majority of my of the cover art. I don't nitpick much.
sure.
I mean, that's their medium, they're contributing, and it's not really for me to micromanage. That's my approach.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I tend not to say much one way or the other on. Um, I sort of like the general trend of you know the palette that's being used and that kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah, sure.
You can see that it just there's a lot of intention. There's a lot of deliberate intention, and one has to sort of respect that. And I guess so much of it relates to marketing.
Right.
What it's going to look like
Yeah.
on the
Yeah,
shelf.
it's all out of our hands as authors, really. It's the publishing side of things. And we get asked for input, but really it's not for us to say.
No,
Okay. Okay, then maybe one final question to wrap things up. If anyone's watching this who's created a wonderful world similar to both of you, if they've done this with their friend or sibling or whatever, what words of advice would you have for someone in that specific situation where they're sharing this
sharing.
world? Uh,
Wow. Um, I don't know. I mean, we've been lucky, right? The friendship has survived.
Yeah, very lucky. A lot of other sort of attempts to create to do creative work together have not worked out.
Yeah,
sure.
And so we're very lucky. I would say, I guess, don't be precious or possessive
Okay. Yeah.
about anything. Realize that it's a shared vision, shared journey. And I've always looked forward in anticipation to what Steve's doing, and I want to get my hands on that book and see what he's done. And because yeah, I'm very much entertained.
Yeah, it's remained an audience, the first audience is the audience of one for each of us. And that maybe that would be a good rule. So that if people are teaming up on something, if there's two people co-creating something, if each of them imagines that they are creating for the other person, um, first and foremost,
Okay.
in order to entertain that other person, it's probably a good place to start, because just on the basis of that, you're providing a certain measure of respect,
Mhm.
for your audience, because how else? I mean, how else could you, right? This is the person you co-created with, um, and then each of you can become, in some respects, the test reader, the advanced reader in a sense. Although not always. I think as long as if each person is confident in the other person's abilities, then you can just wait for it, like Cam says. Um, and that becomes something that you can anticipate and have a lot of fun with. And then whatever they produce, that is fuel to spark your imagination and what you're going to create an answer to it in some fashion or another. Um, I recall quite clearly that when I was closing in on writing The Crippled God, Cam was going to be closing in on writing a sale. And we sat down in Orlando and we hammered out how these things were going to play off each other, the mirroring that was going to occur, and all that kind of stuff. And that was great fun. So as long as you can continue having fun with it, not take it too seriously.
Okay. Well, thank you both so much. I've had a blast. I hope this has been fun. Trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And thank you everyone for watching. Please comment, like the video if you haven't already and you enjoyed what you watched. Thanks so much. Bye.